One of the most important things that I look for in a new game is replay value. When I complete the main campaign, will I be finished with the game entirely? Or will there be a reason once I'm done to play the game over and over, to try different strategies or explore hidden layers to the narrative? As you might guess, Three Houses is a game that piqued my interest early on. The marketing assured me that I would cut my own path, my own destiny. I was told that the future of Fodlan was going to differ decisively based on which of three warring countries I chose to lead into battle. That was the promise. I picked it up, led the Blue Lions, and completed one part of the game's story. It was incredible for me to think at the time that there were not two, but three more storylines for me to play through. I was amazed at the potential replay value of this game, and I'd only played it once. But then, reality proved sobering. I played through Silver Snow next because I missed the event with Edelgard, then Verdant Wind, and finally Crimson Flower. And with the complete picture of both the storyline as well as recycled game assets, I had a much more nuanced view of the game's replay value, with respect to both the gameplay and the story. I've stood by the replayability of Three Houses. In my review, one thing I stated was that the game was more or less built upon its replay value, that many of its features fed into the idea that it's meant to be played more than once. If you're interested, check it out once you've watched this video. Just be aware that my audio has significantly improved since then. With this video, I've picked up a new lav mic which I will use from now on, so on a positive note for my regular viewers, you should be expecting much better sound quality from now on. But back to the issue at hand. The question isn't whether Three Houses has replay value, there's no denying that. The question I pose to you in this video is how? How does Three Houses earn its replay value? It's my own view that while its replayability is to some degree earned, more than a little bit is attained by cheating on the gameplay side, and some shocking lack of creativity on the story side. So it's time to present the opposing view, that Three Houses doesn't completely earn its own replayability, from two sides, the gameplay and the story. I am Blue Barossa, and I make a range of long-form opinionated content as well as funny meme montages on this channel, mostly around Fire Emblem Three Houses. But lately I'm starting to expand into other games like Smash Brothers. If that's your kind of thing, be sure to subscribe for more quality content, and if you're enjoying this video, hit the thumbs up and leave a comment down below. The idea of splitting the narrative into mutually exclusive paths is not unique to Three Houses. In fact, the story structure of Three Houses makes for an easy comparison with Fire Emblem Fates on the 3DS. Now this video has no intention of comparing the two, as I've said before that Three Houses is actually my first Fire Emblem, but I will make one very obvious point. Each of the multiple routes in Fire Emblem Fates has its own price tag attached to it. As such, the separate prices are able to financially support the production and development of routes that differ in gameplay content more than would otherwise be possible. On the other hand, Three Houses is a single game with multiple paths all packaged into the price of one game. It sounds like a great package, and in my view it certainly is. But by bundling the story segments into one package that you pay for just once, it's simply not viable from a production and resource standpoint to differ the stories to the extent of Fire Emblem Fates. So when we talk about how many maps in the game are reused multiple times, I think it's necessary to keep this in mind. We have to be realistic. So personally, I'm not too fussed about maps being reused here and there across the different paths, even if auxiliary battles are especially egregious. But even being realistic, I think there are two shortcuts of major note that severely undercut the game's supposed replayability. The first is that two of the routes, Verdant Wind and Silver Snow, are nearly identical from a chapter standpoint. The maps are almost all the same, the only differences being that the final chapters are different, and Silver Snow lacks the battle at Gronda. But it's simply not enough to make the set of chapters feel consecutively rewarding to play through. The order in which I played the routes was Blue Lions first, then the Church route on accident, then Golden Deer, and finally the Black Eagles. playing through the most unique route last did not do any favours to the game's chapter variety across the routes. The second issue is one that compounds the first. It's the issue of White Clouds, or Part 1, lasting 12 chapters, making it longer than any of the Part 2 storylines, but still necessary to play through on every run. I'm sure I speak for the majority when I say that going through these 12 chapters every time turned things into a bit of a slog. It's the reason that I had to put down my current and final run for the Black Eagles meme team for the time being, because I really just couldn't anymore. The sheer work associated with crafting multiple routes definitely seemed to create time pressures for the developers. In my opinion, this likely caused many chapters to be recycled and for Crimson Flower receiving less attention than it should have. It fails to tie up significant loose ends like those who slither in the dark during the main game. Furthermore, most players will agree that there is a definite lack of cutscenes after Part 1. The Crimson Flower reunion, Edelgard defeating Dimitri, Cornelia revealing Patricia's role in the tragedy of Duscur, and perhaps some other moments are in my mind deserving of cutscenes to underscore their impact upon the story. As stated, the time and budget constraints mean that some shortcuts are inevitable. But something I simply cannot defend are the endings given for the routes, aside from Crimson Flower. Across Silver Snow, Azure Moon, and Verdant Wind, the endings feel very samey, as Byleth will always step into the role of Archbishop. I'd have liked to have seen a different ending for Byleth somewhere. For example, perhaps on Silver Snow, the player would have the option to complete the fusion with Sothis and cause the return of the goddess. This would fulfill the promise made in Part 1 that was never really followed up on. Meanwhile, regardless of which route is taken, Fodlan will always be unified. I find it reductive and a bit troubling that peace is only ever established by one nation annexing the others. This sameness across the endings made reaching them a little less rewarding. That said, I do think that playing through the story from the perspective of a different house still gives a fundamentally different experience. You get attached to new units, and the story information differs depending on the route you choose. For example, Golden Deer players will learn about the truth surrounding the 10 elites, whereas Blue Lions players will learn more about Dimitri's connection to Edelgard and the tragedy of Duscur. Some routes seem to set up players to play the others. For example, Azure Moon leaves unanswered questions about the Agarthans that motivate you to play the other stories. So far this video has been pretty doom and gloom, so let's bring up something about the gameplay I am more enthusiastic about. The class system is something that's knocked around by players for being a bit unintuitive, especially with respect to gender-locked restrictions, but even so, the system gives you a lot of flexibility and freedom to play around and make the gameplay feel more distinct between playthroughs. It's a system that lets you experiment as long as you're playing for fun and not optimizing. If you guys are interested, I have a series on my channel called Meme Teams, where I use funny or slightly unconventional builds on my units. It's nothing too crazy, but I have run stuff like Dark Flyer Ingrid and Bonite Lawrence. They're a lot of fun and passionately edited, so yeah, check it out. The final point that I want to add is one of my pet peeves, and by far the biggest issue about this game that I love. I'm talking about Garreg Mach Monastery. The monastery is a flawed system that I plan on deconstructing and redesigning in a future opinion piece. But for now, I'll sum up that the monastery gameplay isn't particularly interesting, with a lot of fetch quests, a lack of varied or exciting tasks to use your activity points for, and the general monotony and repetitiveness of it. The monastery is something that needlessly inflates playtime for a lot of players, and is usually something that adds to the burden of replaying 3 houses. It's true that you can streamline the process by holding seminars or resting, but a lot of players will miss the ability to maximize the motivation of students every week. On top of that, the grind associated with repetitious auxiliary battles, which you'll probably have to do on Maddening in order to keep up with the enemies, adds another layer to this. In the months after release, it's clear that Intelligent Systems did try to give the players more incentive to replay the game, by adding a new difficulty setting, 6 new units, and some new classes, but this didn't really solve the underlying issues that I've talked about. Overall, I'm still enthusiastic about 3 houses. I love the game. But in terms of its replay value, it does cheat its way to get there with respect to both gameplay and story. And even if we try and be realistic about it from a development standpoint, there are some design choices regarding the similar endings and the repetitiveness of the monastery that really bring the game down on this front. Although I'm burned out essentially, I finally stopped on my 10th run of the game, so it's crazy to think of how much playtime I got out of this game. Every game has a shelf life, and with 3 houses it's higher than most, as you're likely to have a lot of fun at least playing the game around 3 times, maybe more. Now for a quick update on the Black Eagles meme team. I can confirm that it will come eventually, but it will be a bit of a wait. After playing 3 houses so much, it's much better for me to take a break from it. Please understand. My meme montages don't get as many views as my long form opinion pieces, which is why they've been a bit downplayed on my channel as of late. If you enjoy my montages, then definitely leave a like and comment on them so that they can get a blessing from the YouTube algorithm gods. It means making the content for you guys is all the more worthwhile. Before you leave, remember to hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed today's video. It would really help me reach my goal of 1000 subscribers. If you're interested in Smash Brothers, be sure to check out my new Byleth montage, which I put a lot of effort into. Thanks everyone, and see you next time.